I think there's a lack of clarity about what that will mean because it's a relatively recently introduced concept in the latter stages of the negotiation. So obviously a physical border is something you have to make allowances for in terms of creating clearance documents in a way that we haven't been doing for the last 40 plus years. I think it will increase the complexities of the movement of goods in and out of the UK quite considerably because we haven't had a border for some time. So the fact that it's the middle of the sea does make it a little bit more complex, but in reality we'll have a challenge wherever that border was going to be anyway. The recent Conservative majority, which is quite significant, has shown us already that legislation is going through much more quickly than it has done over the prior 3 years. And the Withdrawal Agreement Bill itself went through very quickly in real terms. We're not, obviously, as a business, completely sure what the implications of that are, like most businesses in the UK, but what you can say is that the Conservative majority will at least make that path faster in terms of where we've seen it compared to the previous few years. Again, the implications of it are uncertain, and as a business, that's what we really want to know so that we can shape our response to our clients' needs to fit whatever that legislation decides. The likely consequence of a no-deal Brexit is a scenario that none of us want in business. The implications of that are quite significant in as much as the free movement of goods that we've enjoyed for so many years now is likely to be replaced instead by a tariff-based system that by itself, even if we use the recognised World Trade Organization's guidelines, are still going to be fairly complicated, difficult for people to understand, difficult for our clients to understand, and bring a large burden of administration that they have not had before. That will create some stickiness in the supply chain, something that has been very slick and smooth in recent years. So the implications of a no-deal Brexit are quite profound in ways that we can't even probably understand because we haven't lived in that situation of having to have tariffs and higher priced goods coming in and out of the country. I think the government has set itself a very ambitious target by which to conclude the negotiations. It's got a significant number of trading partners it has to complete these negotiations with, as well as bring all that into law. So there are a lot of steps. If you add recent concerns about coronavirus into the equation, which is now going to detract attention in the government, whether they wish it to or not, quite significantly, against what was already a tight timescale, combine that with the effects of some regional flooding that has also got some significant impact, and together with something of an economic slowdown in the world, and China, one of our biggest suppliers of goods and biggest purchasers of materials, also struggling to get itself back on its feet again. There are so many factors now that would combine to suggest that the government's timescale, which was already aggressive, is now going to be under significant pressure. The implications of Brexit are quite significant for both ourselves and our clients, so we've taken a lot of time to train our staff and to discuss the implications of Brexit on how they could work better with regard to customs and so on. We've also extended that information to our client base. We've increased our status in terms of authorised economic operator in all of our locations to give us the ability to work more effectively through the constraints of Brexit and whatever shape and size they come in. And we've also increased our understanding of the customs responsibilities that we have to display in the different countries as we understand them at the moment. So I think Priority Freight has done a great deal of work. It's in good shape with regard to being able to respond to Brexit. Obviously, we will have to adapt to whatever legal changes we see developed over the next number of months, but we've always been a very flexible and nimble company ready to adapt and adopt to those changes. In terms of considering the industries most and least affected by Brexit, the reality is that all would be. Anybody moving goods in and out of the UK, we're such a large trading nation, and indeed in and out of Europe, will be affected by Brexit in some way or form. In reality, those who export large numbers of products and expensive products like cars and trucks will of course themselves be largely affected because they have a high component count, and each of those components will attract different tariffs, and then the finished goods that they want to export will have a large price against them, so therefore they will be affected by any tariffs that are imposed upon them, thus affecting their competitiveness in other markets. So Brexit has enormous ramifications both for us as individuals, because the prices in the high street might change, and for us as companies, because the ability for us to trade as easily as we did before will be removed, and it will certainly not be the frictionless movement of goods that we saw before. So there will be some stickiness in the economy as a result of Brexit. We have to accept that, understand it, embrace it, but in reality there will be consequences for people trading as we do as a trading nation in the UK. I think the main concerns are trying to adopt our businesses to accommodate the changes that Brexit may bring or are likely to bring, as far as we are able to understand at this stage. Obviously, as legislation becomes clearer, we'll be able to understand fully the implications on business. But even if we work with what we know, the reality is that any movement of goods will be much more complex, or to at least a degree more complex than it was before. So the implications on logistics are somewhat obvious. Not only will we have the challenge of continuing to find the resources to move the goods, but we'll also have to have the additional challenge that those goods will have a longer journey or a more complex journey by virtue of the fact that they will change their status as they move in or out of the UK as a result of Brexit. AEO, or Authorised Economic Operator, was a concept developed by the UK government particularly some years ago to try and distinguish those companies who have understood and met the requirements of customs in each of the countries, not including the UK of course as well, but other European countries, to show that they understand how goods have got to be treated properly through the customs regulations of those countries. So by proving that through an audit process by external government-led parties, we have the ability to be able to say to the government, we're presenting you goods, we understand what is required of them, and they therefore give us special dispensation to move those goods faster through the supply chain. So it's of intrinsic value to our clients to know that we as an AEO operator in all of our offices are able to move their goods much more freely because we understand the regulations of customs and are approved as such to be able to do that. There's not been the take-up that the government would have wished on this because it is very demanding on time, and the organisation has to meet a very high criteria by which it can achieve this status. As Priority Freight, we've been able to do that, as I said, in all of our locations, but it's not something that all of our competitors have been able to achieve. AEO, or Authorised Economic Operator, we believe will remove a significant amount of friction in the supply chain because it will allow the goods that we present to the customs authorities to be recognised as trusted. And if they're trusted, they will therefore go through the customs approval process much more quickly. What we don't know for certain is how difficult that customs process is going to be in its totality because we haven't reached the end of the Brexit negotiations. but it's reasonable to assume that having the AEO status will be a significant advantage commercially for us and therefore for our clients as a result of that. AEO status will be preserved after Brexit. There's a long-standing commitment from the governments of not just the UK but of Europe to be able to raise the standard that goods are being presented to them by companies like Priority Freight. It's going actually to be of significant importance, more than it is right now, because in reality with free movements of goods, proving that you know how to customs clear is not therefore relevant. But the moment that we become a country, or indeed a nation, that is having to clear its goods, AEO status becomes of significant importance. And I think those who haven't got that status will regret it, but it will give us a significant commercial opportunity in the marketplace. In the post-Brexit world, a company like Priority Freight that has adopted the requirements of Brexit and has also found ways of making that experience easier for our clients will have significant advantages. We'll be a much more integral part of that customer's requirements to move goods physically. The goods that they've taken some time to prepare or to buy, they don't want to know that there's a difficulty in getting those goods shipped to the markets that they require them to either go to or come from. So a company like us can offer a service that will give those clients an increased level of confidence, and therefore we will become a more important part of their offering. And that, I think, can be a good thing. That's one of the positives out of operating in a post-Brexit world, where you have understood that market requirement, and not only that, have embraced it and offered some comfort and security to our clients that we can take care of their goods in a very effective way with as little pain to them as possible. So I think Priority Freight's in a very strong position, having invested heavily in how we anticipate the post-Brexit world is going to look, having trained our people, having created an expectation with our clients that we'll be able to take some of those difficulties away. I think we will become a more integral part of their supply chain, a more valued part of their supply chain, and that will only be a good thing as we develop and extend this business going forward.